My name is Michelle September. I live in South Africa, Cape Town, and I worked for Microsoft from 2003 till 2021. I was born in Cape Town, South Africa, and I grew up in a little neighborhood called Elsies River. A very small family, mom and dad and brother. I'm the youngest. Both parents worked and blue collar workers, and they put us through school. And when I mean school, I mean not college, not higher education, school. That was also during apartheid years in South Africa. Think about the 1980s. For us as school kids, the then police, what we would call the apartheid police, would just come in the middle of the night and burst into your house and arrest you, right? Because they took videos or they had pictures of you, or they had what we would call spies, and they would pinpoint where you stay. And my parents were very strict, so I could never do that. But they were just so concerned that they sent me away, outside of Cape Town for a year, just to so that I can be in a safe learning environment. The one thing I knew and my parents instilled was education, right? But at that time, the government gave you, apartheid government gave you bursaries for teaching and nursing. And that's what I did. I got into nursing college. I got my approval letter, and they're like, your intake is in April next year. We're excited to have you. And then I decided to earn extra money and go and help out at a IT store. And that was it. I never saw the nursing college. I was sold. It was a whole new world that opened for me, So I started, that's where my IT career started. This is pre Nelson Mandela's release from prison. Right. So they were still negotiating that sort of unity government. So there were still riots going. So it's still a different world. And now I'm in this world where I've first time that I was exposed to IT, computer, etc. But I was curious. I was just so curious. It was like this new world opened. And this new world of possibilities, right? I didn't even dream of I'm going to go work for Microsoft, because remember that time Microsoft was not in the country. So we had a distributor for Microsoft in the country. That was the only way Microsoft software would come into the country, right through this distributor, what we would now call as part of the channel. But at that time, they were Microsoft, basically. And I remember this rep used to call on us in this little store. And I said to her, I want to work for you. And I continued to say that. And one day she came to me and she's like, are you still interested? I'm like, yes, of course I'm interested. And I applied for the job. But that's how I got into that distributor world, learning about channel, learning about partners, learning about Microsoft software licensing. And that's where I met the person who introduced me to Microsoft. That person was a lady by the name of Albie Breen. When I was in my transition into this IT world, one foot in, my first car I bought it from a gentleman. And it was like that poor car, I got stuck so many times with that car. But when he sold me this car, he said to me, people like you, this is what you can afford. You will never have an expensive car, and you will never leave where you are. But you know what? Today I thank him for it, because that was my push and that was my drive. Okay. So take it back 10 years or so later, and I walk into Microsoft. I had to pinch myself that I've arrived, not knowing that the Microsoft culture, you never arrive, basically. Right? It was just such a surreal moment walking in, and I was in awe of everything. I was just so proud of that, that I made it. I got in. My first role was internal sales. At that time, the role was called customer relationship manager. I worked in Cape Town, so I supported the sales organization, not necessarily specific teams, internal sales. So everything they can't pick up, I would pick up or go with them to join sales calls, customer visits. At that time, the partner account manager was on some extended leave, something to that effect, and they asked me to step in. And I stepped in, and that was magic. I loved it. Part of my role was to ensure that the customer, so the account teams, the partner teams, have everything that they needed to support their goals. You would always do more than what your role prescribed. And I signed up for that. So when I would step into a partner role because someone is on extended vacation or extended leave, I would be stand in for the PAM, for the partner account manager, or I would step into an account executive role while the person is out. So after 18 months, I got into public sector, account exec for specifically local and regional government. But also because I was in Cape Town. Cape Town is the legislature city for the government. So a lot happens here as well. So my role was more than just an account executive. I got to connect with government officials, go to the opening of Parliament. Microsoft played a huge role at that time because technology started to play a role in government at that time. We were also at a time where Microsoft influenced policy for the government at that time. So my public sector role was a mixed board. I worked very closely with corporate affairs at that time, now Brad Smith's organization. But that time they played a massive role in public sector in how we drive policy within governments in various countries, obviously. But in South Africa at that time, obviously, it was really key and instrumental. And, it's looking back now to it's how many years, 20, 21 years later, how that work has paid off significantly. Microsoft is seen as this trusted advisor for government. It plays such I would call it's the corporate citizen of the government, Microsoft was in it for the long term. Like Microsoft is still sitting at that table. In fact, Microsoft is still driving conversations at that table, where some of them have fall off, right? They're no longer there. But because of that strategic engagement, it was a long-term effect. It was a sustainable growth effect. I remember I said to my manager at that time, I want to be the best account manager. That was my mission. That was what I wanted for my personal growth. I wanted to be the best account manager. And I realized if I want to be the best account manager, I need to understand my customer. Well, I need to make the number, and I need to understand my customer, and I need to make my customer happy, right? High SAT scores or customer SAT scores, we used to call it. And in order to do that, I needed to have a deep, deep understanding of the industry. And government is a very complex industry, but it's also the most rewarding industry in terms of what you put in, you get out. I signed this really big deal with the local government, not the city of Cape Town, it was another client. And they were net new to Microsoft. And this is a client that 2 years before 2010, so that's in 2008, they told me, over our dead body, will you, Microsoft, sign a deal with us? That's what the customer told us in a meeting. And that's what you have to give Microsoft. Give us a challenge, and we'll go out of our way to show you why you will do business with us. And we did that in the most constructive, sustainable way that today, currently, that is Microsoft's biggest customer on the continent from a revenue perspective. And they, in fact, after I relocated, this is the CRO who called me while I was in the States to say, just want to let you know, we're moving to Azure and we will be the first government department that's moving to Azure. So like, yeah. In 2010, weekend of Thanksgiving, I arrived in the US. When I moved to Redmond, my primary role was develop partners for local and regional government around the world. If we think about Microsoft that time, this young kid on the block, the cool kids, and we embarked on this journey of trustworthy computing, it leaves me in awe of the leadership at that time that could come up with that. Because even today, there's still legs of that trustworthy computing in the company, but it elevated our status. So it wasn't just a theoretical thing. It was very core to the company, so core to the company that once again, legal and corporate affairs got involved and allocated resources, I think a whole division for this. It was the TWC, Trustworthy Computing. That is, I believe, when we embarked on strategic selling. We didn't call it then because we were cool. We didn't come up with those words, right? Like, but that was the beginning of this very matured organization. It's like we grew up as a company doing trustworthy computing. And, probably on a leadership level, they had that all figured out way before it came to us. But when it hit the market and customers, it changed the game for Microsoft. It just elevated the company as a trustworthy partner. There was so much magic into that initiative in terms of getting us a seat at the table. And in 2015, I moved to the modern work, now called M365 product marketing organization, because they were looking to how do we bring public sector into our product marketing organization and take our product to market with a public sector flavor. So there was more of an opportunity for public sector in Office 365, M365. I think what we realized is we were leaving revenue on the table because we're not that relevant to our client. And then it was kind of one of those things we would call the best kept secrets. We had all the compliance. We meet all the compliance. We meet still today, right? But how do we tell that story? And that story you tell with that public sector flavor. So that was the opportunity. I was with that group until 2020, and then I moved to modern work engineering. Now, that was my dream job, to work in engineering. I was fascinated by the engineering organization, how they work, how they get the product, the conceptual side of the product to when the product gets to marketing. And it didn't disappoint. I learned all that. They special group of people, learned so much from them. But it was also at a time where the way people buy were different. It wasn't the same. You couldn't just go and, I'm a salesperson, I want to have an appointment. People were looking for credibility. And once again, Microsoft started doing that. I know Scott Guthrie's organization was leading on that, on technical selling. How do we get our engineers in front of customers, especially actually the results on that was really, really good in terms of accelerating of decisions. It's continued to go that way where customers want to hear from the source. Microsoft wrote the book on channel. We owned it, and we really understand that world of partnership. I would encourage Microsoft to continue with that in terms for that scale and where we are and where we need to go and the work that still needs to be done. We need that partner ecosystem to scale and to reach. So continue to write chapters and chapters of that book and ignite that ecosystem to take it to the next level. If you speak to people in public sector, our career was mission driven. It wasn't just a job. It was mission driven. It was how literally we believe we go out there and we make governments better. And by making governments better, we're making it better for citizens. We're making it better for educators, for health professionals, where health is part of government in some of those countries, where government can do the work of government and how technology empowers them to do that, to deliver on their mandate. I remember one of the things I had to do was open a learning center. It was a multi-generation learning center. So during the day, it was open to adults and after school for the kiddos, for children, school-aged children. And we open it during the day. And people talk about this and they probably think it doesn't happen. But when you go and you see these people and their eyes literally pop out because it's the first time they see a computer, right? Adult woman. And they take the mouse and they put it on the screen. When you witness that, you know that you have so much work to do. So that technology is not just for the few, but technology is inclusive. It's for everyone. But the hope it brings to people, because it just unlocks these possibilities, right, for them to education, digital literacy. And you must remember, we're not talking about uneducated people. We're just talking about people that has not been exposed to technology. Even government officials. I had government officials, senior government officials, that pull me aside, ask me, can you help to train me so that I can understand how to use technology? Now, we all know government officials and just they have egos, but you can imagine what it took from that person to ask me that. And then ask if I come in to train that I don't announce it, that I do it very quietly, and that is what this philanthropy in Microsoft, what it sort of meant to me when I worked at Microsoft was how do we broaden that circle to everyone? And that's still today my mission of how do I broaden that circle? That hope that was in that woman's eyes, that I see that in other folks. And we have still so much work to do, but we have the tools. It's just a matter of the scale. And we're working on that. Microsoft mission and that mission-driven approach, because technology unlocked my potential. So technology changed my world, right? It gave me hope. It allowed me to dream. It changed my world entirely. As the company matured, we also matured. I mean, we all grew up in Microsoft, and we learned so much. And the experience is so valuable. Now, how do I share that global experience that I have, opening data centers in Germany, in France, in the US? How do I bring it back here? Now, if I can do that, and we look at all the current and former Microsoft employees, and we all do our part for where we are in the world, we can literally change the world, right? So when we used to say that at Microsoft, people like, you guys are smoking your socks. What are you doing? Like, why are you saying that? It's just a tagline. No, it's not. It was our reality. And we continue to do that post Microsoft because it never leaves you. Just never leaves you. It was more than a job. It was more than employee and employer. It was deeply personal. I think in some ways it was intentional. If we remember at these conferences how the leadership would bring these people in, of how we changed people with disabilities, how technology helped them, how technology helped developers, people from disadvantaged communities, countries. But also, if you remember, research used to have a session at these events, and they would tell us of things that would happen 10 years from now, right? House of the future and factory of the future and all that. Where are you going to find that? Right? Where are you going to find maybe technology, but not the energy, not that willpower, not that deep rooted personal mission of we can do this, and we're doing it. It's not just a dream. We're living the dream. For me, philanthropy is not just another org in Microsoft. It's the heartbeat of Microsoft. It is the core of what we do. That's what differentiates us. We do things to change the world. We started what we're going to put a PC in every home. And we at now where we're going to allow people to go after their potential, to reach their potential. It's ongoing. We're still doing it. We continue to do it post Microsoft. As a Microsoft alum, I continue to do it. I don't know how not to do it. It's in my DNA. So in 2021, I decided that there's still work to be done in my country, South Africa, and I've learned so much, so much, on sort of this global platform, that it was time to give back in terms of not to everyone, in terms of experiences, in terms of that scale of go-to-market engines, product marketing, business development strategies. But also the one thing I learned is that, especially from a partner ecosystem, there was just a lot of work to be done. But then also, how do you go back to that little neighborhood of Elsies River and say to the people, now you can dream. Let me tell you about that dream, what it looks like, because people don't know what they don't know. But when you tell them about this world and they can step into that world, in fact, that world wants them to step in. That is what I'm doing.